They were definitely like Lady Gaga, no question.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Thanks for giving some time to us. My first question goes a little bit back in time, and it's actually a question I have for you, Clem. How good were the Stilettos?
How good were the Stilettos? Conceptually, they were great.
Yeah, he saw it once or
You know,
twice,
it was,
right?
yeah, well, we used to hang out at Club 82 on East 4th Street, around the corner from CBGB, and that's where I first saw Chris and Debbie perform with the Stilettos. They were good. I'm Fred Smith, who later played in television, who played with us in Blondie, was in the band. And conceptually, it was a lot of fun. I saw them open for the New York Dolls. It's a lot of cover songs, though, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of cover. Yeah,
Not too many original songs.
Yeah, there was a few things. There was maybe...
Was Platinum Blonde there then?
No, but they had like that Tar in the Back, My Back song that you mentioned, which is about Eric, you know, fucking in phone booths and stuff like that.
You know, it's a strange time then. I mean, how good were the New York Dolls? I thought they were fantastic.
Yeah,
Other people thought they sucked.
But they, it wasn't like a high level of proficiency with the musicianship, you know, certainly that was... But the thing was thought out. It was like a cabaret act.
You know, there was a lot of conceptual art going on, and it translated into music as well at the time. You know, and just the whole sort of pop culture was kind of forming, really, in a lot of ways. You know, a lot of the aesthetics were just kind of coming to the forefront.
There were acts that were kind of parodies of an act.
Well, you have Wayne County, for instance. You know, he would come out in drag, you know, with a toilet bowl and all those kind of things that were pretty off the wall at the time.
But could you, if you compare it to maybe other contemporary artists at the time, was there something that made
They
them
were
special?
definitely like Lady Gaga, no question.
There was a well-known band called Manhattan Transfer, you know what Manhattan Transfer was? And they were like a real cabaret
Well, they were
act,
jazz singers.
Jazz cabaret act, and they used to play on the circuit, and maybe a little bit in that vein too, you know.
A lot of the venues in New York were sort of cabaret venues. They weren't really, when you think of a rock venue, like for instance where we are today in the Paradiso, you know, the venues were cabaret basically. There was Max's Kansas City was basically a cabaret.
Yeah.
How ambitious, what was the aim with the Stilettos at the point? You say you played a lot of covers and the music was not very profound maybe yet, but what was the aim at that time?
Well, I mean, the musicianship was just a little funky, you know, we were all honing our skills. I think I was the first musician in the band that didn't change. There was always rotating musicians. They always had different ones. It was a girl group situation, you know, and it referenced the old girl groups as well as the R&B girl groups. You know,
a seminal influence in Blondie is the girl group sound. You know, with the Ronettes, the Shangri-Las, Marvelettes, things like that.
Supremes.
And Supremes, and you know, that was kind of like what Stilettos were sort of reminiscent of that, kind of shooting for that in some ways.
You know, the English invasion knocked out the girl groups in America. The Supremes, if it hadn't been for the Beatles, would have gone on to be at the level of the Beatles. You know, it would have been. They might have been a worldwide huge phenomenon, but not quite. You know, the Beatles kind of put the caps on. Everybody started paying attention to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and the Shangri-Las maybe would have gone on to be a world phenomenon.
Were you from the beginning already looking at what was happening in other sides of the world? You mentioned now the English invasion, but were you always aware of what was going on around you?
Yeah, of course, yeah, sure. Always. It was, as Clem has always been saying lately, you know, you live in an urban area in the West, or in any one of these big Western cities, you're always surrounded by multicultural, you know, and you're always hearing world music. There was world music before it was called world music, you know.
You know, geographically, Manhattan being closer to Europe than, let's say, Ohio or LA, for instance. So there was always that European influence on the East Coast of America, you know, and so you were always kind of, I mean, for instance, the first place the Beatles came to was New York City, you know, so you get that influence there, you know.
Can you remember, I asked now the same question to you, what was the thing that made you decide to ask Clem to join Uplay?
Clem was the last of many drummers that we put an ad in the Village Voice, you know what Village Voice is, right? We put an ad in the Village Voice.
Before Craigslist. And
before all that stuff. And it says, I remember there was the phrasing, I wish somebody had a copy of it. It said something like freak energy drummer, you know, wanted for, you know, up and coming band, whatever the heck it was. And he was literally the last one of a whole series of guys, maybe 20 to 40 guys who showed up. And he was the only one that had a, you know, similar mindset, and he knew who we were as well, and he had great shoes. So all those things together.
What shoes were they?
some kind of cool boots, you know.
They were actually red platform shoes,
Yeah.
I think.
But when you first met each other, to actually play with each other, was there, you had a talk, or you instantly went to just jam and see?
Oh no, we would probably.
No, we had a
talk, you
chat
know.
for sure. There was a common denominator in the likes and dislikes. For instance, you know, we talked about the Ronettes or the Velvet Underground or Iggy and the Stooges and things like that. And you know, at that time, that music was very underground. Obviously, like the Stooges or the Velvet Underground, and things like the Ronettes or the Shangri-Las. That wasn't very fashionable. You know, that wasn't
not
what
mainstream. Certainly.
It wasn't the kind of music that was in the mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, what
pop
was
culture.
going on there? Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah, you know, it was, you know,
Bee Gees.
David Bowie was a sort of
Yeah.
common denominator for all of us.
Yeah,
you know,
he
I
was crossing the line between the uptown and downtown, and he was still gritty and saying something poetic and, you know, making a more profound statement than a lot of the MOR, you know what MOR is, you know, middle of the road. It's what we call, like, you know, like Linda Ronstadt or something like that.
And the whole glam rock scene that came prior to the so-called CBGB punk rock scene informed that scene, you know, and that was really a big common denominator because the Stilettos were essentially a glam rock band, for lack of a better.
Well, the girls
you know.
were all infatuated with the
Right.
dolls. They all loved the dolls, you know.